Welcome back to the Explanation Pro. Today I'll recap a biographical period drama film called Anna and the King. Spoilers incoming. The movie begins as the main character, Anna, arrives in Siam with his son, Louis. They ride a carriage to the palace where they first meet the Prime Minister, who speaks to her through an interpreter. The Prime Minister then starts to ask personal questions and addresses her as Sir, which irritates Anna. The interpreter explains that women are not allowed to stand in front of the Prime Minister, so she's being addressed as a man. She tells the interpreter that she's been sent there to tutor the king's son, so personal questions should be unnecessary. The Prime Minister then speaks to her in English that it is customary in Siam to do so, before telling the interpreter to show her to their rooms inside the palace. Anna tries to protest as they'd been promised lodgings outside the palace, but the Prime Minister tells her to be patient. Meanwhile, Burmese soldiers terrorize a small town in the country. Some of the locals had been hanged on the trees and they threaten the remaining living locals not to cut them down or they will come back. Anna finally meets King Mongkut after 3 weeks after her arrival. She ignores the customs as advised by the Prime Minister and barges toward the king even though he was set to leave the hall. The king seems angry at her at first but eventually tells her that she is smart under pressure but a bit brash. He also tells her that instead of just teaching his eldest son, he now wants Anna to teach all of his children. The king takes her to the gardens and introduces her to his wives, concubines, and children. The eldest son and heir to the throne, Chulalongkorn, doesn't seem pleased with having a foreigner as a teacher. King Mongkut also introduces her to his head wife, Lady Thiang, and to his other children, including Princess Fa. He insists on having everyone in his family be educated as it will be a step toward Siam's reform. Anna then brings up their prior agreement that she and her son would live outside the palace. The king then says that they shall remain inside and snaps at her when she tries to protest again. A new concubine arrives in the palace. On the way there, she's very tearful as her lover yells at her from behind to not forget about him. During class, Chulalongkorn gives Anna a map and begins to dictate the history of Siam. Louis starts acting up so Chulalongkorn insults Louis, telling him that he's being ignorant because he didn't grow up with a father. The two begin to wrestle with one another. Fa goes to the throne room to tell the king, just as the new concubine named Tuptim is being presented to him. King Mongkut goes to the garden and Lady Thiang explains that the boys were being punished to write 1,000 lines on the blackboard. Louis had already started but Chulalongkorn remains stubborn. The king simply smiles and leaves. Louis soon finishes his lines and is sent home. Chulalongkorn still hasn't started and stays there until nighttime. Lady Thiang arrives and the prince becomes smug as he thinks that she has come to relieve him of the punishment. To his surprise, Lady Thiang tells Anna that the king has sent supper for her alone. This pushes Chulalongkorn to start writing and Anna shares a meal with him once he's done. They then hear someone crying from afar so they follow the noise and see a female slave chained. Anna finds out that the slave had tried to buy her freedom and her owner had accepted it but then just accused her of being ungrateful. The Prime Minister tells her not to meddle and to not involve the prince in such matters. King Mongkut meets with his advisor, Alec, and his brother, Prince Chaufa. They discuss how recent Burmese attacks might have the British behind them as Burma is allied with England. Meanwhile, Chulalongkorn becomes curious about the topic of slavery so Anna gives him a book to read and tells him to ask his father. Anna eventually sets the slave free before giving her own wedding ring to the slave's owner. The owner then complains to the king and wants to have Anna punished. King Mongkut sides with Anna as the Prime Minister tells the slave's owner that bondservants have the right to buy their freedom. Frustrated, the owner throws away Anna's ring. She then goes to class, where Fa gives her a drawing and Lady Thiang introduces her to Tuptim. The king slowly becomes impressed with Anna and takes her on a boat ride before introducing her to her new house outside the palace. The rice festival soon approaches and as the royal family prepares for the celebrations, Anna and Tuptim grow closer. Tuptim asks Anna how her husband died before asking her to send a letter for her. Anna and Louis join the royal family during their caravan to their place of worship. During the ride, King Mongkut offers Louis a cigar, which Anna prohibits him from accepting. The king then says that he won't do it again as long as she doesn't offer her children any more books before giving her back the book that Anna gave Chulalongkorn earlier. Meanwhile, an Englishman angrily leaves a house about to be attacked by the Burmese. They're careful not to harm him and wait for him to leave before they enter the house. King Mongkut and his men hear of this attack. His brother and his advisor want to strike back at the British, who they are sure are supporting the Burmese soldiers. The king doesn't permit their attack and instead plans to invite the British envoys to dinner as an attempt to strengthen Siam's relationship with them as well as make the French Indochina think twice before attacking them. He then places Anna in charge of preparation so that the British would feel comfortable. Anna has the royal family dress in more Western formal clothes. They are also being trained in using Western cutlery as well as serving in a Western manner. She has trouble with the latter as the king arrives to check on her and the servants bow down, as is their custom. King Mongkut then permits them to stand up in his presence but only for the night of the dinner. During the dinner, Anna and the king meet with Lord and Lady Bradley, as well as the Englishman from earlier, Mr. Kincaid. Kincaid starts to belittle the Siamese and insists on the superiority of the British. The king manages to dispute him calmly but Anna stands up and calls Kincaid out when he says too much. King Mongkut watches Anna with a smile before inviting her for a waltz to end the night. On a trip to the market, Tuptim's lover secretly sends a boy to give Anna a letter meant for Tuptim. Meanwhile, Prince Chowfa and Alec prepare for an expedition in hopes of cornering the Burmese soldiers. King Mongkut summons Anna and confides in her that he was actually concerned that the British are making a move against him and Siam, hence the reason for the dinner with the British envoys. He also gives Anna a ring as thanks for her efforts during the dinner and as a replacement for her wedding ring, which she gave to the slave owner earlier. Anna feels uncomfortable treating the ring as a replacement and rejects the gift. A strong rain starts and disrupts Anna's classes. Tuptim goes to the monastery and sees his lover, who is now a monk in order to cope with her being a concubine. That night, Fa Ying's drawings fall to the floor of Anna's house. She sees them and picks them up before putting them on her bedside table. The next day, Anna learns that Fa Ying has contracted cholera and is now dying. The Prime Minister takes Anna to the princess's room and reminds her not to cry, as it's one of their traditions not to weep when a person is dying. Anna gets to spend a few moments with Fa Ying before she finally passes away. The king becomes very distraught after her death. Anna attempts to make him spend time with his other children by planning a picnic on the palace grounds. King Mongkut refuses and calls Anna a hypocrite when she tries to lecture him about moving on from a loved one's death. He tells her that she hasn't even moved on from his husband's death. One night, Anna is unable to sleep and ventures out to the beach. She gets surprised by the king and he shows her a letter from the President of America, telling him that he cannot help Siam at this point if the conflict there escalates. Meanwhile, Prince Chowfa and Alec's expedition is successful as they manage to find the camp of the Burmese soldiers and kill some of them. They then decide to spend the night in the camp. Alec offers Chowfa a drink, but the prince doesn't drink as he realizes that Alec poisoned the wine. All the other soldiers get poisoned and Chowfa tries to run away. He jumps from the window and injures his leg, which allows Alec to corner him by the river and shoot him dead. The king gets informed that both Chowfa and Alec die. The growing tensions make the British panic and eager to leave Siam. A servant approaches Anna in the middle of the night and takes her to Tuptim, who had shaved her head and hid in the monastery to be with her lover. Tuptim then expresses her gratitude for having Anna as a friend before the soldiers arrive and arrest her. She has a trial, which Anna attends, to which Tuptim and his lover are sentenced to death. Anna then stands up and says that what they're doing is not right as Tuptim was only following her feelings for her lover. She then declares that she shall talk to the king about it. She does go to the king, who tells her that her outburst during the trial made him look weak and gave people the impression that she had power over him. Because of this, he could not interfere in the prosecution, and Tuptim and her lover are executed. Anna then decides to also leave Siam. Kincaid then approaches the Prime Minister and tells him of Alec's betrayal. The Prime Minister then tells the king this information and tells him that this army won't be able to reach the palace in time. The king then sees a wall painting of a white elephant and tells the Prime Minister to spread the news that glad tidings have come. Anna and her household arrive at the dock, where the people rush in as there had been news of a white elephant sighting. Louis tries to protest leaving but Anna continues on to buy tickets. She is then confronted by the Prime Minister who tells her that this was all a ruse to evacuate the royal family from the palace, as they found out that there was a traitor. He then asks Anna to go with them to make the act more convincing. She agrees. Alex soon figures out that the king plans to take his family to the monastery where he spent half of his life in. He gathers his troops and they ride to their current location. King Mongkut sees their army approaching and tells Anna that she and the rest of his family will be going on ahead without him. The king and his men then start to attach explosives under the bridge as a trap for Alec. Alec and the Burmese soldiers arrive. They hesitate to cross the bridge, thinking it's a trap until King Mongkut himself and his men cross to the middle. Anna gets informed of the king's action, which would have him killed if the trap activates. Desperate to save him, she comes up with a plan and enlists the help of the other members of the royal family. Before they're able to detonate the explosives, a couple of fireworks fly across them. The sound of an English bugle can also be heard from afar. This scares the Burmese soldiers enough to make them retreat and leave Alec behind, as they know they're no match against the British. Alec tries to call after them and tell them that it's all a trap, but they don't listen. King Mongkut's men go forward to kill Alec, but the king stops them as he wants to spare his former advisor's life and let him live with the embarrassment of his failed rebellion. The king and his men then turn to leave as Alec picks up a gun from a fallen soldier and aims for King Mongkut. One of the king's men, who sits afar and was meant to activate the trap, sees Alec armed and pulls the trigger. The bridge explodes and collapses, killing Alec. King Mongkut returns to where his family is now packing up the explosives. He then confronts Anna and asks her why she didn't follow his orders to go ahead to the monastery. She then explains that she wanted to save his life, and the king smiles. The children then perform a play before Anna and her household leave for England. The movie ends as King Mongkut and Anna share one last dance while Chulalongkorn watches from afar. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.